Hi, my name is Blanch, and today I'm going to be talking about ADHD/ADD. ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or Hyperactive Disorder. ADD is pretty much the same thing, except it excludes the H, hyperactivity. Typically, doctors and pediatricians and psychologists today use ADHD as a blanket or an umbrella term. They divide it into three types. An attentive type, hyperactive/impulsive type, and a combination of the two. The definition of ADHD, it is a chronic condition that affects the ability to pay attention, to focus. A person with ADHD would typically be hyperactive and impulsive, and ADHD typically comes with a low self-esteem, trouble with keeping relationships, and concentration. And it affects, this graphic, top right, shows some of the parts of the brain that ADHD affects. The problem with ADHD is that it is a learning disorder, so it affects learning. People with ADHD have trouble paying attention, and that's obviously a bad thing, especially in class, especially in lectures, when you need to be comprehending overarching themes and ideas. If you can't pay attention, if you can't keep focus, then you will not understand the material and you will get bad grades. It also affects peer relationships. People with ADHD tend to be a bit more withdrawn and unwilling to communicate. There are lots of other concerns that come with ADHD too. In fact, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that children who have ADHD, who have been diagnosed with ADHD, should be screened for other disorders and problems. For example, some of the problems that have shown are behavior problems, such as ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder, where kids act out persistently. CD, which is conduct disorder, a bit more serious. Kids commit more serious violations of rules or even the law. Learning disorders, such as dyslexia. Dyslexia is a bit more well known. It's difficulty with reading. Dysgraphia is difficulty with writing, and dyscalculia is difficulty with math. And a bit more of a common one, anxiety or depression. There are a couple of types of anxiety. Separation anxiety, difficulty or fear of being separated from loved ones, such as parents, family, friends, people you trust. Social anxiety, a fear of going to school, or if you're an adult, work. Just a fear of social situations where you have to talk to people and interact. And just general anxiety, a fear of the future and what's coming next, and fear of maybe an upcoming test or studying or schoolwork. Okay. Is ADHD present regionally, nationally, and globally? A similarity between all three of these lenses is that all of the accounts present a rise in ADHD cases. Now, from hearing that, one might assume that that means that more and more people are getting ADHD. But my personal opinion is that ADHD has just typically have been overlooked. Back then, doctors didn't really understand ADHD, obviously. And nowadays, it is more coming into light. It's not as overlooked anymore. It's more widespread, more well known, and more people are going and getting their kids tested for it. A difference, especially nationally and globally, is that ADHD in the past has been more primarily recognized in the USA. It is most observable in the USA. It's been tested the most, it's been studied and researched the most, and you'll see in the statistics slide that comes next that it does have an effect on the accounts of ADHD, the percentage of ADHD in kids. Statistics regionally, nationally, and globally. The regional statistics, you can see the bottom left graph. My region that I chose was Texas, the state Texas. You can observe that Texas has less percentages of ADHD in kids than the USA as a whole. And which is kind of similar to the national. As you can see in the top right, Midwestern states have more ADHD rates than Eastern and South states like Texas, with Kentucky having 14.8%, which is the most. And it's interesting to think about why that is. The culture, maybe, the population, environment, religion, even, politics. It's definitely something to ponder. And globally, as I mentioned before, there are some factors that change that you have to consider when looking at this pie chart, which says that 5.29% of kids are diagnosed with ADHD, and that is the most, I'd say, at least widely accepted percentage for ADHD. And I wouldn't entirely trust this because, especially lesser fortunate countries, they don't really have access to treatment and to studies about ADHD. They can't really diagnose their kids, at least not as well as the USA can, for example, or more first world countries. And of course, you have to think about the societal norms for other countries. Parents and kids may be scared to express that they have ADHD because of the societal norms, what is considered to be normal there. So you have to consider that before wholly accepting this percentage. And lastly, how to treat ADHD. Since ADHD is a chronic disorder, it can't technically be cured, but there are some steps you can take to alleviate the symptoms of ADHD. Common one is therapy. There's lots of different types of therapy. I would say one-on-one therapy, family therapy, support group, cognitive behavioral, applied behavior analysis, lots of different types of therapy that attacks ADHD and its symptoms in different ways. And medication too, which is, I'd say, widely known. Stimulants are the most popular. 70 to 80% of kids who have taken stimulants report fewer symptoms. And then there's also non-stimulants. They are a bit slower acting than normal stimulants, but they do last a bit longer. I believe they last for 24 hours. And while therapy and medication, we right now can't really help with that unless we become therapists or pharmacists. The thing we can do to help with the problem of ADHD is the stigma behind it. There is a big stigma behind learning behavior or learning disabilities and disorders as well. And that includes ADHD. I think if we understand better how ADHD works, how kids with ADHD, how their brain works, how they process things, and we have to understand that just because a kid has ADHD doesn't mean they're any less smarter than their peers or even any more smarter. They just process things differently. And we should try our best to cater to their quirks and the way they function. And here's my citations, and that's the end of my presentation. I hope that you came out of this being more knowledgeable about ADHD and how it works. Thank you.